The WWE Hall of Fame, normally in past trips, has been one of the funnest nights for me. It's awful fun. You know, we went to the WrestleMania 28. We all dressed up. I remember WrestleMania 27. I have memories of taking a 1 hour nap in the parking lot, sleeping in my car because Atlanta was way too packed full of fun that whole week. And basically, that night before the Hall of Fame, we didn't even lay down to go to sleep. Basically, we came home from a night. We knew that we had to leave, and I believe an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours at the most, to go to WrestleMania Access. All three of us took our turn jumping in the shower and getting cleaned up for the next day, and I think we just sat there. And I remember me and Miguel, I think we watched the replay of the Atlanta Hawks versus the Boston Celtics, because CJ Productions, who also went to WrestleMania that year, went to that basketball game and had courtside seats, and I think we were watching the game, but mostly we were looking to see if we can find CJ in the crowd, and we just went out to have fun the next day because we knew that, you know, as drained as we were going to be able to get as fired up as we could because we were going to be going into WrestleMania Access the next day. We were hyped up about, you know, doing all the activities. It was a WrestleMania trip. It's all or bust. So basically, we just went out to start a new day, and it was what it was. When I think about last year, it was basically the frantic rush to get to the Hall of Fame because WrestleMania Access, the Miguel's meeting of the Undertaker took longer than we thought it was going to, and I thought I would be able to go. I got into the next session of Access before Miguel was able to get out of the Undertaker. I got to watch Miguel meet the Undertaker, and then basically went up, but somehow security realized that Miguel was leaving the Undertaker line. It was making him leave they made him leave Access only to re-enter Access. So that pushed us back to the back of the Ric Flair line. So we had to meet Rick as fast as we could, jump in a cab. I ran into my hotel. I nearly pushed Brooke Tessmacher out of the way at the check-in front desk at the Drury Inn on accident, just because I threw my bags at Rodolfo, the guy working the front counter, and asked him to hold these and I would be back for them after the Hall of Fame. He gave me a check-in slip. I apologized to Brooke, jumped back in the cab, and we headed over to the show and made it into the Hall of Fame just before Jerry the King Lawler came out to announce that Toledo would be the first member inducted into the Hall of Fame. So I have a lot of good memories of the Hall of Fame. Honestly, this year, if I would have known the Hall of Fame class was going to look like this, I would be like a lot of other people out there. The Hall of Fame, you look back over the past few years, has been putting in a whole bunch of names. When I think look back at the WrestleMania 30 list of names that went in with the Ultimate Warrior, Jake the Snake Roberts, Scott Hall, Lita, Paul Bearer, Mr. T. You know, a lot of those names are big names that could have been spread around to making a lot of other classes look really nice. Although, you know, only Ultimate Warrior was only the guy to really work on top as a main eventer. There were a lot of big names. Jake the Snake Roberts was one of the biggest names that come out of the 80s and into the 90s. Scott Hall was a guy that really transformed wrestling when he left as Razor Ramon, heading to WCW to become, you know, Scott Hall, his real name, and with the NWO, and it sort of made everybody change the station from watching WWE to the underdog WCW, pushing that to the wrestling to watch. You know, there's a whole lot of big names in there. When you look at the 2015 induction class, it's headlined by the Macho Man Randy Savage, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, a guy that honestly should have gone into the WrestleMania Hall of Fame years ago, but through stories that we don't even know and we can't even get to the bottom of. You know, Vince McMahon, you know, just came out on the Stone Cold Steve Austin show and said that there was no bad blood between the two. Just, you know, Randy was staying out of the spotlight. I don't know. I really feel like the year Randy Savage, you know, showed up at Comic-Con and was the superstar to launch the Defining Moments Mattel series with his Mattel figure, the first Randy Savage figure since the not LJNs, from the Oh shoot, I can't remember the name of the figure, and I feel like an idiot right now. But his first figure in a real long time. He never had a Jack Superstar. He wasn't involved in a lot of things just because there was this black cloud put over Randy. Some people said it was due to this Stephanie McMahon rumor, or some people said it was due to the way that he left. And for some reason, Vince took it harder when Macho Man left rather than when Hogan left or anybody else. Why Vince brought Hogan back in 2002, but Vince wouldn't reach out and try to bring Savage back any of the years, even if it just was for a Monday Night Raw appearance or just for an induction to the Hall of Fame. Who knows? There has to be something behind that story, but we'll never know. But definitely a long time coming. It would have meant a whole lot more if Savage would have went into the Hall of Fame when he was alive, but sadly, a few years ago, he passed with his heart attack while he was in the car, and we've all seen the Macho Man story, the DVD documentary that came out earlier this year, and it was a sad one, man. It was a really sad one, and the doctor that was the Randy Savage's physician basically said that he asked to look at Randy when Randy was in the doctor's office helping his mother out, but Randy, caring for other people more than himself, pushed off the doctor's wishes and didn't do the physical. The doctor says that if Randy would have taken the physical, he could have got Randy on some prescriptions, or maybe got him on a health regimen that would have made it where Randy Savage was probably still alive today. But it just wasn't meant to be, and I get a little bit sad talking about it. But Macho Man, honestly, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time and the most deserving guy to go to the Hall of Fame. You have Kevin Nash, a.k.a. Diesel, who more than likely will be inducted. They haven't put the commercial up, or the sort of segment, I guess you can say, going over his career in the NWO, WCW, and WWE. This guy was a headliner for both of them. He was the one guy to beat Goldberg's streak, which most people will remember him for, even though most people think of him in a negative way as the one guy who killed off Goldberg's momentum in WCW. Somebody had to beat the guy. Goldberg wasn't going to be undefeated here in 2015. Somebody had to be the guy to beat him. Somebody was going to get that black cloud put on them. More than likely, if it wasn't Nash, it was going to be Hulk Hogan, because Hulk Hogan had worked out the deal with Eric Bischoff that if he put over Goldberg for the championship in the George Dome, Hogan would be the guy to get to beat him first. And what kind of a deal they worked out because of that more than likely ended up being the finger poke of doom on Monday Nitro between Nash and Hogan. Nash said the hardest part about being Booker as in WCW that he found was basically you could come up with the best ideas in the world, but then you have to pass them through 7 different wrestlers. And if one guy doesn't agree with what you wrote down on that paper and doesn't think it's the best thing in his interest, he's going to say, I'm not going to do it. And then you have to go back into the writer's room, and basically you have to find some way to make everybody okay just so you can have a show every Monday night on Nitro. From there, they have a special presentation of the Warrior Award. That was an award that was created by the Ultimate Warrior that he asked Vince McMahon to pass on the tradition. Connor is a guy that came into our hearts last year, and basically as a Make-A-Wish person for Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan really put Connor as the reason that he won the WWE Championship. As Connor was in the front row, Daniel stopped his celebration to go up to Connor and told him that he was the reason that he was able to overcome the odds of the Authority with beating Triple H earlier in the night and then coming back and beating Randy Orton and Batista. A special kid and a special heart, the Make-A-Wish kids. There's thousands of them that the WWE sees a year, and how they're able to do that and be able to still put on a show that night. It breaks my heart thinking about it. I got 2 kids, and when you're getting ready to become a father, it's one of the most stressful things to think about. Is you think that most of the time you think about there's a new baby coming, it's going to be a new part of your life, but a lot of nights you're sitting there, you're wondering, like, what if something happens, what if something goes wrong, and it's a hard thing to deal with, and unless you've gone through it, me sitting here, I am a normal person. I'm sure I've got some things wrong with me that I wish were different, but I mean, like, when you create a new life, you don't want them to be sick. You don't want them to be deaf or blind or have some sort of a disease. So all these things run through your mind like crazy. So how the WWE does this for the Make-A-Wish people is really, really cool and really awesome. From there, they go to Arnold Schwarzenegger. WWE just did a lot with Arnold in Ohio, where basically they were at the Arnold Classic doing tryouts for a lot of the bodybuilders, and they did autograph signings. They were getting their name out there. They did their first NXT live shows outside of Florida, where the wrestlers were able to wrestle in front of small crowds that were not the Florida normals that go there. They go crazy for everything they do. So maybe they were able to learn some things. You saw WWE is taking NXT on the road now. They're going to be at WrestleMania weekend, having their own show at San Jose University. So there's another crowd that they're going to be able to be in front of. But Arnold, even though he doesn't have a whole lot of moments, he does have a very cool moment at the height of the Triple H WWE Championship run, I believe in 1999. Arnold was there to hype up one of his movies. He was on the announce team announcing the match. Triple H came over, sort of, gave him a poke, and Arnold knocked him out. Very cool moment. I know that Arnold was a part of being, I believe, one of the guest hosts of Raw when he came to publicize one of his movies that were coming out in Brooklyn, I believe. Didn't really do a whole lot, but those are the only two moments. But he says he's a big fan of Bruno Sammartino and wrestling of back in the day. So he's probably the one guy that said he would show up to be a big star. But it also branched a whole lot between WWE and the Arnold Schwarzenegger, bodybuilding thing. So that is possibly a bridge that could be built stronger in the future. From there, one of the biggest stars of the tag team division of the 80s, no jokes involved. The Bushwhackers didn't win a lot, but everybody loved these guys. Everybody did the Butch and Luke Bushwhacker thing. Hopefully their speech will be real short, and I don't really know what they could really talk about. Rikishi going in is sort of a downer to me. He sort of gets put in the Koko Beware situation where he just sort of seems like a guy to me. I don't know if you talk about the Sultan, or you talk about a member of the not the Head Shrinkers, not the Wild Samoans either. Whatever the name of that tag team was escapes me. Where he was a guy before he ended up becoming Rikishi, gaining a whole lot of weight. He was over. I mean, definitely he was over at that point. Everybody's always going to remember he's the guy who came out and said he did it for The Rock. He ran over Stone Cold Steve Austin with a car at the Survivor Series. I believe it was 2000 off the top of my head. And that set up Stone Cold Steve Austin's return, where he just beat the crap out of Rikishi. I knew that it was hokey. Stone Cold Steve Austin, being ran over by Rikishi, that year-long storyline that they ran, and it sort of just seemed like they pointed the finger at Rikishi because they didn't want to point it at Triple H because everybody thought that's who it was going to be, and they wanted to build up a whole lot of suspense to what was going down. But when Rikishi and Stone Cold Steve Austin had their match, and especially when Stone Cold hit Rikishi with the truck, that was one of those moments when I thought what happened on TV was real. And as stupid as it sounds, I really thought that Stone Cold Steve Austin killed Rikishi that night. Now that I'm thinking about that match, I'm a little bit more fired up for it than I should have been. I need to look up what match that was and check that out on the WWE Network tonight. From there, Medusa going in as the Divas person. She was a star. I still haven't gone and checked out that Bull Nakano versus Medusa match that I promised Gilbert Blaze that I would watch before the Hall of Fame. There was a lot of rumors. I was hoping that this would be the year of The Rock. I've heard that, Mickey James was somebody that was named that might be going in this year. I guess we should be happy that we're getting the Macho Man Randy Savage. So we'll go from there. That's your Hall of Fame class. I don't see really anybody else getting named. Kevin Nash is the guy that still needs to be named. It looks like he will be the guy who will be closing it. Still plan on leaving to make it to the WrestleCon wrestling show. I know that if I stayed at the show and jumped on the train and got over there, I would possibly only miss one match at the WrestleCon wrestling show. But honestly, in my opinion, the WrestleCon wrestling show looks like it's going to be one of the best nights of action for me to check out. I'm really fired up about that, almost more than anything else about the whole weekend. But Hall of Fame, always fun. We got $40 seats. We're sitting way in the back. So if you're up there with us, give us a wave.